If you've ever told your manager you're buying a house, mention your resume is still updated just in case, or let it slip you don't need this paycheck, stop. That comment may already be working against you. It didn't feel like a mistake, it felt like honesty, building trust with someone who's supposed to have your back. That information doesn't disappear. It gets filed away and quietly decides who gets protected at review season and who ends up on a layoff list nobody explains. There are 9 things you should never tell your manager once hired. Let's get into them. Here's something worth sitting with before we start. Research from Gallup has repeatedly found that only around 1 in 5 employees strongly agree they trust the leadership of their own organization. And yet, people hand that same leadership detailed information constantly, not because they're careless, but because it comes out naturally, in a hallway chat, a one-on-one moment that felt human. I'm Dre. I've spent time on the side of the table where these decisions actually get made, and I want to walk you through exactly what not to hand over and why it matters more than almost anyone tells you. Number 1 is your exact salary and whatever you negotiated to get it. This feels like good news, so it seems safe to mention. Here's the misconception. People assume a strong negotiation makes them look sharp. In practice, the moment a manager or a coworker gets a clear number in their head, you stop being the new hire who's doing well, and you become a comparison point. If you pushed hard and landed above the opening offer, that detail tends to get remembered, and it often shows up later as being quietly passed over in the next round of raises, because on paper, you already got yours. Pay transparency research consistently shows that when people learn a peer earns more for similar work, it damages morale and trust in leadership, even when the pay gap is completely justified. So the number doesn't just sit with you, it changes the room around you. There's a quieter cost too. Once a manager has your figure in their head, every future ask gets filtered through it. A stretch project, more support, more headcount. All of it reads differently once you've been mentally filed as the expensive one. So keep compensation between you, HR, and your own household. Maybe one person completely outside the company. If it comes up at work, I'm happy with where things landed, closes the door without inviting comparison. If this kind of thing is useful, take a second and subscribe, because this channel is built entirely around the stuff nobody puts in the employee handbook. Number 2 is letting on that this job is a stepping stone. This usually slips out early and almost always with good intentions. Someone asks about your 5-year plan and you say you're hoping to move into leadership somewhere else, or that this role is mostly a resume builder. The misconception is that ambition reads as impressive. What actually happens is the math changes the second a manager hears you see the role as temporary. Why would they spend real mentorship, development time, or political capital on someone who's already told them they're passing through? You move from being someone worth investing in to someone worth using while you're available. That shows up later as being left off the visible project, skipped for the stretch assignment, passed over for the track that leads somewhere. Those slots quietly go to people who look like they're staying. The irony is that people who broadcast an exit timeline often end up staying the longest because they never got the growth that would have made leaving worth it. Keep your long-term ambitions for a mentor outside the building or a trusted friend, and stay focused on what you're actually building right now. Number 3 is admitting you're still passively looking. This one feels like nothing. A line like, "I've still got my profile up just in case," seems completely reasonable, and keeping options open usually is fine. The problem is what happens in a manager's head the moment they know you're doing it. You become a flight risk, and flight risks get managed differently. Multi-year projects go elsewhere. You get looped into big decisions later instead of earlier. Some managers will quietly start building a backup plan for your responsibilities, and none of it gets said out loud. It just happens. There's a trust cost that's hard to undo too. Once someone believes you have a foot out the door, they stop sharing freely reorg plans, sensitive headcount decisions, anything that feels risky if it walked out with you. You get frozen out of exactly the conversations that would help you grow. Keep your search completely separate from your workplace relationships. If you get an offer and decide to leave, that's the moment for the conversation, not a passing comment months early. If you're getting something out of this, hit like. It genuinely helps this reach people who need to hear it before they make the mistake instead of after. Number 4 is your side business. This feels safe because it happens on your own time, and legally, in most cases, it is fine. Perception doesn't follow the law, though. The moment a manager learns about a side project, a consulting gig, an online shop, freelance work, a quiet question tends to form about where your real focus actually is. Ask for a lighter week or push back a deadline, and it can get blamed on the side hustle instead of a legitimate workload problem. If that side business even loosely touches your company's industry, it gets worse, because some managers start privately wondering about conflicts of interest even when there's nothing there. Keep it private, unless your company has a specific policy that requires disclosure. And if it does, that conversation goes through the formal HR channel, in writing, not as a casual mention over coffee. Number 5 is financial pressure. Any hint that you need this job specifically, and this is one of the more damaging ones because people give it away almost by accident. A comment about a mortgage stretching you thin, or something like, "I really can't afford to lose this right now," dropped in a moment that feels relatable and human. Here's what it actually does. The instant a manager senses you feel financially trapped, the power in the relationship shifts, and not in your direction. Some managers will lean on that, consciously or not. You get handed more work with the unspoken understanding that you're not exactly positioned to say no. Raises stall because there's a sense you'll stay regardless. National surveys on financial stress consistently find that a large share of workers, often described as well over half, say a single delayed paycheck would create real hardship. Your workplace is the one room where showing it can quietly be used against you. Take that conversation to your actual support system, a partner, a friend, a financial advisor, and project stability at work, even in the weeks you don't feel it. Not because you're hiding, but because your leverage depends on it. Number 6 is your big life plans outside of work. This is one almost nobody warns you about because it feels like the opposite of a secret. You just put an offer on a house, you're planning to start a family, you're considering grad school or a move across the country. It comes out naturally because it's genuinely good news. Here's what a manager quietly hears underneath it. Every one of those plans reads as a signal about where your attention is heading next, and it's not fully here. A new baby reads as reduced availability. A house further from the office reads as a future commute problem or an eventual resignation. Grad school reads as someone already building an exit ramp. None of that is fair, and all of it gets factored in without you ever seeing the decision get made. When it's time to staff the 2-year project or the big client relationship, the role that needs someone fully in for the next year and a half, people quietly route around whoever just described a life about to get very full somewhere else. You don't get told that's why. You just stop getting tapped. You get to have a full life, just not one you hand a timeline of to the person who controls your assignments. Share the big news with people who will actually celebrate it with you. And when a real professional adjustment is coming, raise the specific version of it when it's relevant. Something like, "I'll need some flexibility in March," not the full story months ahead of time. Number 7 is early burnout or mental health struggles. And I want to be careful here because how you're doing genuinely matters and there's nothing wrong with struggling. The issue isn't the struggle, it's the timing and the audience. Disclosing burnout or anxiety to a manager early in a role before real trust exists can quietly reshape how they see your capacity long after you've recovered. Some respond by routing high-visibility work elsewhere to protect you, which sounds kind, but often means being sidelined from exactly the opportunities that move a career forward. Others start quietly questioning your resilience, fairly or not, and that impression is hard to undo. This is completely different from a genuine medical need that calls for a formal accommodation, which is a legitimate, protected conversation you should never hesitate to have. Quick disclaimer: none of this is legal advice, and employment law varies, so a real accommodation conversation belongs with HR or an employment attorney, not a casual aside to your manager. What actually costs you is the offhand version, mentioning you're just really burnt out with no formal request attached. Lean on people outside the reporting structure for that. Friends, a therapist, a mentor elsewhere. And if it's been genuinely weighing on you, talking to a doctor or a therapist is a real step worth taking. Number 8 is the flip side of number 5, and it catches confident people off guard. Never reveal that you don't need the job, meaning savings, a working spouse, a paid-off house, enough of a cushion that the paycheck is functionally optional. It slips out as honesty, something like, "I could take a year off if I wanted to," and it feels like power. Watch what it actually does, though. Your leverage in a raise conversation quietly evaporates because the logic becomes, they don't need the money, so we don't need to stretch to keep them happy. And that increase goes to someone who seems hungrier. You also become a flight risk in a different outfit because someone who doesn't need the paycheck could walk on a whim. So managers hesitate to build long-term plans around you the same way they would with someone they think is leaving. The real lesson connecting 5 and 8 is that your financial position, in either direction, is leverage information the second someone else can read it. Keep your financial reality, pressure, or cushion out of the workplace entirely, and let your manager believe exactly one thing: that you're there by choice, fairly compensated, and worth keeping that way. Number 9 is the big one, and it's where everything else we've covered comes together. Never let your manager know you have an active offer or a counteroffer on the table. The window after you've interviewed elsewhere and have something real in hand is one of the most exposed positions you'll ever be in professionally. And it's tempting to mention, sometimes as leverage, sometimes it just slips. Here's what most people don't see coming. The moment a manager knows another offer exists, something shifts permanently. Whether or not you use it to negotiate, whether you stay or go. Research on counteroffers has repeatedly found that roughly half the people who accept one are gone again within about a year anyway, because the real reason someone started looking rarely gets solved by a one-time raise. And managers who've been through this before know that pattern. So from that point forward, you're managed differently, as the person who almost left, which usually means less long-term investment, not more. This is where the earlier items connect. If you'd mentioned the role felt temporary, let slip you were still looking. Talked about life plans pulling you elsewhere, and a manager already has a read on your financial pressure or cushion. A real offer on top of that writes the story for them. This person was always leaving. Manage them accordingly, starting now. None of these signs prove anything alone. This may be a signal rather than certainty. But in systems I've worked around, that combination tends to get read as a complete picture. If you get an offer, decide privately, on your own terms, whether to use it to negotiate or simply move on. If you negotiate, do it as a deliberate, professional conversation, not a slip. If you decide to stay, let your performance carry that message, instead of a story about the offer you turned down. Being this guarded can feel strange, especially in workplaces that talk constantly about authenticity and bringing your whole self to work. But there's a real difference between being genuine and being strategic about what you share. And once you've been hired, protecting your trajectory usually means holding on to both at the same time. That's not paranoia. It's just how you protect the career you're actually building. If this helped you see your workplace a little differently, subscribe for the next one, where we get into exactly what to do in your first 90 days to build the kind of trust that actually gets you promoted. And drop a comment with which of these 9 surprised you most. I'll see you in the next one.